We've all been waiting for it, and here it is.
I've made a lot of mistakes.
No, similar look, but different franchise.
Hello. I'm Sarah Jessica Parker.
Not quite.
The fate of my entire people rests on me. I will do what I must to ensure their survival.
There's the one. BRB. In our continuing series and our exploration into Thor material, and specifically who got the hammer, we finally come to the one guy the fans have been looking forward to seeing in live action for quite a while now. Heck, they probably wanted to see this guy on screen more than Chris Hemsworth. I know I've talked about it. In the live action Marvel Cinematic Universe films, we've seen hints of the character in Thor Ragnarok. Hell, y'all remember the tower that the Grandmaster had? And it had this head statue of what looks to be Bill on the side of the building. Well, we also find that there were plans of incorporating the character in the film. Whatever happened, those plans were dropped and we got what we got. Bounding into comics, we recently wrote about Christian Bale possibly playing the alien warrior in Thor Love and Thunder, based on reports of mocap and some other stuff extrapolated from Tessa Thompson and Taika Waititi. But let's get into it. Alright, in the comics, Bill is the first creature to pick up the hammer Mjolnir other than Thor in the main universe, the 616 storyline. Bill was introduced in The Mighty Thor number 337 in November of 1983. The Corbinite was drawn with the intent to subvert the expectations of the reader. The comic book audience would debate where the character belonged on that good or evil scale. Creator Walt Simonson described Bill as the everyman for the Corbinite alien race, modeled after a skeletal horse. So what you saw on the cover was this evil-looking creature wielding Thor's hammer and smashing through the title. And the response Simonson got was what he expected. Fans were confused why a villainous-looking creature would be able to pick up Mjolnir. On a personal note, the artwork of Simonson is phenomenal in this book. This stuff rivals a lot of the artwork that I'm seeing from whatever Young Guns are out on the Marvel titles nowadays. And he did writing and artwork. A lot of these kids are just doing one or the other. But back to the issue at hand. The run introducing Bill was only for 4 issues. We're introduced to a massive spacecraft absorbing a star, and monitoring the situation is Nick Fury, and he employs Thor to investigate the vessel. As Thor enters the ship, he finds it mostly empty save for one containment unit. A hand bursts out of it, and out pops a misshapen orange horse-like creature formidable enough to take on the warrior god. There was an enchantment on Thor's hammer at that point in the comics where if Thor was separated from it for more than 60 seconds, and he was on Earth, he would revert to his Dr. Donald Blake form, with all his strength sapped from him. And though in space, Bill's ship came close to Earth, so Thor essentially became like a normal human. Bill takes advantage of the situation and knocks him out. Afterward, Bill looks for the hammer and only finds a stick. And this is the stick that Mjolnir turns into when Thor goes into his Dr. Donald Blake form. Bill randomly strikes the stick against a surface in frustration, and it changes the alien into a version of the Asgardian hero, complete with cape and armor, although the horse face is still present. Then Odin calls for Thor because Bill has the hammer and the All-Father accidentally brings Bill to Asgard. Thor eventually gets called back to the realm as well, and Odin sees that Bill was just as worthy as his son to carry the hammer, Mjolnir. We eventually get a bit more of Beta Ray Bill's background, that he's a warrior protector of his people. His planet had been attacked by some demon creatures and they're chasing after the remnants of his race through space. Bill was seeking shelter in another planet for them to inhabit and feels that with the hammer he might be able to save his people from the demon horde. Odin makes a wager that the two, Bill and Thor, should enter into battle for Mjolnir and sends both to the fiery planet to compete. Since the atmosphere is much like Bill's homeworld, the alien has the upper hand on the Asgardian and eventually wins the battle. However, Beta Ray refuses to deal the finishing blow to the failed Thor and carries him back to Odin. To shorten it up, Odin had planned this all out as some sort of humbling lesson for Thor, and he'd made an arrangement with Eitri the Dwarf and his kin to create a new hammer for Bill, thus being Stormbreaker. Thor and Bill go off to save the remnants of Bill's race in this space fight with some demons. We find out they're actually fire demons under the auspices of Surtur, the big fire creature who threatens Asgard every now and then with destruction. Bill finds out that Surtur plans to lay waste to Asgard just like he did with his people, and he helps Thor, this time, in fighting against the large fire demon to prevent Ragnarok. At some point in the story, we get to learn that the Corbinites don't actually look like Bill. The scientists of his homeworlds mix some of his genetic material with that of a carnivorous, equine-like beast, the result being a formidable warrior who looks more beastly, and the selection process required subjects to undergo some grueling tests wherein they were killed by the hundreds. Bill was the only one chosen because he was the only survivor. The popularity of the warrior alien cannot be understated, as he has shown up at various instances in the comic to help Thor out with some greater threat than he could handle by himself, or he's gone on some adventures of his own. He teams up with Thunderstrike and Dargo Couture, Thor from the future, as well as the modern-day Thor in a limited series Thor Corps by Tom DeFalco and art by Pat Oliphant. He's also been part of a larger Thor group during the Thor Corps, Battle World, Police Force of God Emperor Doom run in the comics. We talked about that one a little bit during the last video. Or was it the one before that? Anyway, he teamed up with the Silver Surfer, Quasar, Zenith, and Morphex once upon a time to form the Star Masters.
Star-Lord.
Who?
Star-Lord, man. Legendary outlaw.
That lasted for about 3 issues. Then there's a certain time in the comics where he teamed up with the likes of Silver Surfer, Nova, Quasar, Gladiator, Ronan the Accuser, and Icon, aka Rom the Space Knight. This team was assembled by Cosmo the Space Dog at the behest of Star-Lord, who just recently bit the dust. Did I mention comics are weird? This team was called the Annihilators, who initially formed up in the Thanos Imperative Devastation back in January of 2011. It wasn't until May that this title was officially named and out on the shelves. Being a limited series, it was only for 4 issues. They met again in December of the same year for another limited 4-issue run called the Annihilators Earthfall. He also gets captured by Super Skrull during the Secret Invasion storyline. There's this run where he takes on a more human form and he joins Alpha Flight for a short while. There's also this weird story in there of Bill going to hunt Galactus because the Eater of Worlds had devoured a planet he had found for his race to settle on. Beta Ray Bill God Hunter was the title. And that was a limited series run, and it only did about 3 issues back in 2009. He was spotted recently on the Unworthy Thor title, offering Stormbreaker to his fallen Asgardian friend, who went by Odinson, which... okay, we kind of talked about that weirdness already. But yeah, if there was anything comic book fans learned from the title back then, is that there was more than one person who was worthy to carry the hammer. At some point in the comic, Odin calls Beta Ray Bill Beta Ray Thor. But because of narrative confusion, writers probably dropped the title for the most part because it was easier for audiences to identify him by his everyman name, Bill. And on Simonson's part, it was brilliant because it was elevating an everyman of another race to a point of worthiness where instead of the blonde-haired, blue-eyed, chiseled god of perfection, we get all the nastiness and villainous looks and fervor, and they're just as worthy to the standards of the Hammer's enchantments as Thor. I'm sure there's a bit more to extrapolate from that, but all in all, Bill was about not being fooled by appearances. Just as Bill thought Thor was a demon, and the audience thought, just by looking at Bill, believed him to be a demon. I mean, comics, right? But that's what we got on Bill. We have more coming for you as we continue more with the Thor stuff. So stay tuned to Bounding into Comics for the latest takes on nerd news and geeky pop culture. Until next time.